Hi everybody, it's Shayne. We're going to be doing a coffee with a critic as you guys get here. Let me get the microphone set up from the very beginning this time. You Here we go. You can hear me now. All right. That's what I was just doing, the YouTube. We can also check the tickety-tock and make sure we have decent audio there. Good? Okay. I'm going to start a recording.
I'm not too familiar with these microphones. Do you just clip them on?
Just clip it on,
Okay,
and
cool.
you'll be good. Once it's clipped on, everything will be good. And this will be for clips later that we can get.
Perfect. Everybody's probably wondering where Shayne's at right now.
Don't worry, everybody. I'll be here very soon. Okay, how do I?
In they come.
All right. Get that good and ready to go. All right. Hi, boys and girls. I'm here with Kaston, who is a psychology student here in Fort Smith, Arkansas, right?
Yes, sir, that's correct.
And you came with questions written down to
Yeah,
ask me.
I have a few questions. I do have a few questions, but I do like your authenticity and how, you know, in a city like Fort Smith, it's very like right-handed, and I'm not too sure with your stance politically or anything, I will be honest, but I do like how how real you are. You know, you won't change for anybody, and how you build stuff from the ground up. For example, your properties. For example, your platform. You know, you put yourself out there, and I really respect that about you. So one of my first questions would be, what was the moment that kind of changed the way that you think? Like a lot of people in Fort Smith, I feel like they think the same way about a lot of different things. You know what I mean? So what was like something in your life or anything that made you start standing out differently in the thought process or just everything, whether that be politically, with housing, or anything?
What?
Gotta start your 1 to 10 questions.
Oh yeah. Let's start real quick with a question before we get going on this.
Yeah.
So first off, this is my coffee with a critic. I don't think this is the biggest critic of me, but we haven't had as many people email me yet. So remember, ShayneIsGreat@gmail.com. Include the word coffee in the subject line. Send me an email, and I will have coffee. No matter how much you question me, you can ask questions, you can challenge me, and I will meet up with you. So on a scale of 1 to 10, how critical are you?
10 being like super critical?
Yeah.
Probably like a 1.
A 1. So you're very low on the critic scale.
Everything I've seen your content wise and what you say, I like.
Okay.
I like very much. So that's why I wanted to reach out with you.
Well,
And
I'm glad you did. I'm glad you reached out.
and I appreciate it.
That said, if you disagree with me, believe me, I'd love to have coffee with you. Several people have said so, and then they back out. So please, you can ask anything. I will not get upset. I will not get mad. So you notice that I'm kind of authentic. When did that start? What changed for me? I've always been a little bit odd. As a kid, I stood out. I was a little bit of a dweeb, as they would say back in the 80s. But the moment that I guess really hit me the most, I was in 7th grade. And back then, Nike Air Jordan shoes were the shoes you needed to have. Like, that was the cool kid shoes. And I was the poor kid. I grew up very, very poor. And everybody would make fun of me for my garage sale shoes. Well, one day, I was at a yard sale with my mother, and I saw a pair of Nike Air Jordans, and I thought, finally, these are only $1. I'm going to be able to wear the cool kid shoes, and people are going to quit making fun of me, and everything's going to be great. And so I bought them, and I wore them to school the next day, and I was so proud. I had my pant legs rolled up a little bit to emphasize my sneakers. I thought, this is going to be the day that I finally am cool. And then they made fun of me for having old Air Jordans that weren't new enough. And I was just like, oh my gosh, these people don't make sense at all. There is no logic to this. There is no reason for this. And any part of my brain that said, I care about style. I care about what other people are trying to push me to. All of that died at that moment. All of it, any part of that within me just passed.
And was it because more of the fact that you were just like, no matter what, these people are going to judge me, or you realized kind of like, how would the Air Jordans, no matter what, I'm going to have to do this on my own. It's all up to me ultimately. No one's coming to save me. At the end of the day, Shayne's going to have to help out Shayne.
Maybe a little bit of that. I don't think it was that sophisticated.
Okay.
I think it was more like these people don't understand even the standards they're setting. And they're all just kind of going to pick on me no matter what. It doesn't matter what I do, somebody's going to dislike it. In the comments of this video, there are going to be people that are be like, I can't believe you didn't wear new Air Jordans back then. There's going to be somebody in the comments that's going to be judging me for the fashion that I had back then. It doesn't matter what you're doing, you're going to be judged harshly. So why does it matter that you're judged harshly? Why don't you just behave and not worry about the judgment that will become? You know, why not do the thing you want to do? And if the judgment comes, let it come. It's going to come anyway.
Right. And honestly, some of the critics, like even with the critics with coffee, a lot of that gets you out there. Even your haters are honestly, you know, your biggest fans. So they're still watching your content. They're still doing whatever. But I feel like that makes you stand out quite a bit. And with that being said, what has came, like, what have you reaped from that would be the kind of the question. Like, what benefits or what things have came out from being like authentic? Like, for example, I'm a young college kid. I'm reaching out because, you know, in some aspects I truly do look up to you, and I want to do things like you do someday, and I'm hoping I could be similar to you. So there's a lot of people that look up to you. Is there other things that, you know, have kind of like you've gotten out of just standing out and being different?
Yeah, I mean, if you go to a business meeting and everybody's wearing polo shirts and khaki pants and you wear a disco shirt, after the meeting, when you call people up and they're like, which one were you? The guy in the disco shirt. Everybody remembers that.
Okay.
It creates memorability, which is one of the hardest things to do. If you think about businesses, when businesses are starting, one of the first things they look at is marketing. How do I get people to notice my business over the other businesses? If you're starting in business and you try to behave exactly as everybody else and not stand out and do what everybody is doing, that puts you at a competitive disadvantage. You don't have the memorability, you don't have all of that right off of the bat. So I think being my authentic self made me more memorable. Now, it comes with the caveat of people aren't as likely to trust me right off of the bat because I'm different, okay? There are people that saw the vampire thing in the newspaper and would not support me because of that immediately. They're like, nope. But then they kind of get curious every once in a while and they'll tune in on a video like this and they'll message me and say, you know, I never thought that I could support you, but I actually can. I agree with a lot of what you're saying. So it creates the interest, it creates some of the branding, but you have to be able to follow it up with the ability to perform what you say you're going to perform. If you're just weird and you can't do anything to back it up, that's not going to be a measure of success. You need to be authentic and capable.
Right. So with being capable, what are some of the things that, like, I'm 20, what are some of the things that you did when you were younger to help you like learn more of the responsibility, or more like you're very charismatic and you're very well spoken and you're very good on camera. What are some things that you've done to be more like that, or just anything, little things? Because I mean, I'm sure y'all could tell I'm a little nervous. Like, I've never been on camera. He's running for mayor of Fort Smith. I'm just a college kid here. So I would be a little nervous, but that's why I'm out here. I'm trying to get better. I'm trying to better myself. So what are some steps or things that you did? Like, I got a Roth open and I invested in the Vanguard S&P. So I'm trying to do stuff like that just to get, you know, up there like one day like you.
So let's say you wanted to be strong, like you decide you want to be a bodybuilder like Arnold Schwarzenegger. Okay, what do you need to do to become that way?
You got to work out, you got to eat correctly. There's a lot of things, sleep.
There's several different steps, but you're going to have to become uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Okay, you're going to have to be doing things. Normal people don't end up looking like Arnold. Most people aren't going to look like Arnold. They're just not.
Right.
It's the people that decide, I'm going to commit to this to a degree that other people are not willing to commit to it, that end up looking like Arnold. They end up working out like crazy. They end up, you know, going beyond and willing to face the discomfort. They go to the gym when they don't look good.
Yeah.
They have people stare at them. They have people question them. In order to get something different from this world, other people are going to be judging you.
Yeah.
Period. And you need to become okay with that. You need to commit to that. Martial arts, I teach martial arts. If people say, you know, well, what's the hardest thing to do in martial arts? And I always say walking on the mats the first time, period. That is the hardest thing to do. Getting hit in the head the first time, that's a little challenging, yeah, but it's not as hard as the first time you walk out on the mats. I'll never forget walking on the mats the first time. I was like 11, 12 years old, and it was like the most nerve-wracking thing. What am I about to face? Am I going to have to, dip my fingers and knuckles in glass and fight somebody? I had no idea what to expect. That's normal. So get out of your comfort zone.
Right.
That would be the thing. If everybody is comfortable, if everybody that's your ordinary friends are saying, oh, you're doing a great job exactly the way you are, start to question that. Okay?
Right.
Start to say, hang on a minute. If all my ordinary friends are saying you're doing a great job, I must be on an ordinary path that lots of people are going to be doing. Yeah. People question me constantly.
Oh, yeah.
And that's almost an indication like, I may be doing something right. Now, being questioned can also mean you're doing something dumb. Okay, so to be clear, you're good friends if you're standing on top of a building without a rope on the edge and like, I think I could land safely. And they're like, no, don't do it. They probably have a point in certain instances.
Right.
But when it comes to trying something in business, trying something in, get out there, try it. If you fail, you'll learn from it.
Right. And with being uncomfortable, like for me, myself, I've lost 100 pounds in the past. So there's a lot of times where you have to be very uncomfortable. There was times where I genuinely didn't eat anything but a protein bar and a protein shake. And that taught me a lot. It gave me a lot of mental clarity, taught me a lot about myself. It's how to overcome these problems. Like earlier I was talking about no one's coming to save you. A lot of it comes to that, and it taught me different lessons, like just how to be disciplined. And really, you always got to rely on yourself no matter what. Life will get hard, but you got to stay harder. And that's kind of like the David Goggins mentality that I try to keep with that. But what are some of the lessons that life has taught you with overcoming different challenges? Like, for example, investing, you could lose a lot of money, or like all the political slander you're getting, stuff like that. There's a whole lot of different avenues you could just take it, but whichever one you feel like is the most impactful almost.
Okay. The more you are on your way to accomplishing, the more challenges you're going to face.
Okay.
Well, how long ago did you lose 100 pounds?
2 years ago.
Congratulations, first off. Okay. I'm a huge fan of people bettering their lives and turning things around. That is incredible. That is hard to do. Most of you guys couldn't lose 100 pounds. Most of you in your life never will.
Yeah.
And this guy's already done it. So that's an accomplishment beyond what most people can do. That says you're driven. That says you don't back down just because it gets hard. That means you make mistakes, but you start back over again.
Right.
All of those things are necessary to be successful at whatever you're doing. Here's the thing I remember hearing. I don't remember who the person was, but we're going to use Tom Brady in this case because he's one of the few football players I know. Tom Brady, I think, is a quarterback and won a bunch of Super Bowls, and I remember seeing him on South Park. But
retired now.
Yeah. Okay. So he's retired now. Anyway, so Tom Brady, football player, he doesn't just wake up one day and oh my gosh, I won the Super Bowl. How did that happen?
Right.
There was never that was not an accident for him.
Right.
Okay. There was a whole process in place that he went through over and over and over again in all these steps. Nobody just accidentally woke up one day and was like, wow, I can't believe it. I won the Super Bowl today. Take any business leader, Elon Musk, anyone, just name one. He didn't just wake up one day and wow, I can't believe it. I just accidentally made $1 billion today. There were lots of decisions that went into making that happen. There's probably some lotto winner crazy stories that will go against that, and people will point them out in the comments. That doesn't matter. The general consensus is you go through a process. I'm going to eat less. I'm going to exercise. I'm going to do all these things. I'm going to make good business decisions. I'm going to make good political decisions. I'm going to make content today, even if I don't feel like making content. I'm going to go through these steps over and over and over again. And then eventually I wake up one day and there's 500,000 people following me on social media, and that's how it happens.
So being intentional will make you uncomfortable, but without intentionality, you'll get nowhere, is essentially what you're saying.
That's probably better than I said it, yes.
Thank you.
I should let you answer more questions for me.
And by the way, the audience is congratulating you on your weight loss episode.
Thank you guys, I really appreciate it. It means a lot to me.
Yeah.
So my next question that I have written down, if you were 20 years old and you were in Fort Smith and you're a broke college kid, just for example, just hypothetical like me, you had no properties, what would you do? How would you start?
Okay, so I remember being 21, 22, roughly around that age, and I was doing a commission-only sales job, and this older gentleman that I was talking to that I worked with, he said, Shayne, you're really smart, you're clever, you should read the book Rich Dad, Poor Dad. It'll change your life. You'll be so much more successful. And I looked him in the eyes and I said, I don't need to read that book. I'm good the way I am. And he's like, no, like seriously, dude, there are things that you will learn from this that you will not figure out for yourself, and you should read it. And I said, no, man, I'm super intelligent. I can figure out how to do this on my own. And I did not read it until I was 37 years old. And if I could go back in time and change anything in my life, I would go punch myself in the face. And I would punch myself in the face probably several times because I'm hard-headed until I finally say, fine, I'll read the book. I'll read the book. And I would make myself read that book. It will teach you the difference between assets and liabilities. It'll teach you to think about money in terms of where does my money go into things that grow in value versus where does my money go in things that cost us value. And that sounds like a minute thing, but it's the most important thing. The biggest difference between rich people and poor people is where they put their money.
Yep.
It's not having money. It's what they do with their money when they have it. Learning that trick. So I would say read the book Rich Dad, Poor Dad, period.
Okay.
That would be the number one piece of advice I would give a person that's 20 years old.
What amount of money would you say that you would need to, or even credit score involved, because I'm sure that goes a lot into it, to actually officially get a piece of property, and that way you could start potentially renting it?
I bought 2 houses last year with no credit checks and no money down. And anybody, you wouldn't even have to be a legal U.S. citizen. I don't even think you'd have to be 18 to buy the houses we bought. As long as you could find somebody 18 years old to sign the contract and put it in a trust for you, you probably still could have made those deals. There's literally not a single person that watches this that could not have bought those houses. One of the negotiations I did in a video, I met the person, walked through the house, and before a 10-minute video was finished, we had the entire negotiation filmed, and they agreed to sell me the house, no money down, and all the terms. There are ways to buy houses regardless of your situation, regardless of the amount of money that you have. Now, having more money, having better credit, that gives you more opportunity. It makes it easier, but it's not impossible to start without it.
So connecting that to like the book Rich Dad, Poor Dad, when you were buying those properties, were they like totally trashed, I'm assuming?
Yeah.
How would you differentiate that from being a liability or, potentially something that's going to make you a lot of money?
Okay, so the majority of people can't become rich.
Right.
Okay? If the majority of people could become rich and our economy would work, why don't we just make the minimum wage $1 million an hour? Everybody gets $1 million an hour, everybody's rich tomorrow, and now everything's great. You can't have the majority of people rich because that's just not how the economy works. If most people look at the house and think, wow, that's a great house, it's not the house to invest in.
Okay.
If most people look at it and say, ew, that's bad, why would you buy that? That's the house you want, okay?
Okay.
Generally speaking, you want the house that smells bad, you want the house that looks dated, you want the house that does not look like it would be easy to fix. You're buying problems, okay? Here's a mentality I didn't realize I had, but I had for many years, and it kept me poor. Clip that back on right there. No worries, no worries.
Get it back on there.
Audio issues. 1 second.
Kind of push down on it until it snapped up.
Here, let me help
Thank you,
you.
Shane.
No worries.
Appreciate you.
There you go.
Thank you.
So, most of my problems, I come from a poor family. My problems all felt like they were related to money. So we can't afford to pay the electric bill. We can't afford to pay rent. We can't afford the car payment.
Yeah.
They're money related,
Yeah.
right? So you start to think, if I had money, I wouldn't have problems. And money becomes the desire to fix the problems you have in your life. So then you picture, if I have money, I won't have problems. And in reality, you're trying to imagine this life without problems. But life is, like making money is actually the pursuit of problems. I have so many more problems today than I ever had when I was poor. I have so many more problems. I have to do so much more every day than I ever had to do before. And when I see a problem, I think, ooh, can I make money on that or not? Because some problems are profitable. And if you start to look at a problem and say, can I make money off of that? Is that a profitable problem?
Yeah.
That'll change the way you look at things. I'm no longer avoiding problems. I'm looking for problems. In fact, I'm buying problems. I've paid $140,000 last year for people's problems that they didn't want to have anymore. And they're happy with the money, I'm happy with the problems. I fix the problems, I will make more money off of those things. But you think about the products you buy when you see an infomercial. It's a guy trying to convince you have a problem, that you need to be able to turn a piece of window screen into a boat or whatever. And we'll use Flex Seal to fix this problem. They have to establish the problem that they're fixing. That's how you make money.
Okay. And then with that, I know a lot of that comes with standing out. When you were buying those properties, a lot of people might not buy that. And that's another thing, just like you were talking about, staying out. And then you get a lot of problems from that. So you're constantly uncomfortable. But like you were saying, you're staying intentional. So it all kind of links back to each other, I've noticed. I've really noticed that in this conversation. But also, even with that being said, just how do you stay so intentional, like with all these different problems? Because like you said, more problems come about, and it gets harder. And then you got, life just happens. Like anything could go wrong. Like I saw a video where you said, you had some tenants were paying their rent, stuff like that. So even when the problems get tough, what do you think, like how does your mind process it? And what's the first thing you do when you get super stressed?
Okay, so I don't really get stressed easily. I think that's a biological weirdness that I have. I stay calm under stress. So that's an advantage I have. Some people freak out but I do stay calm naturally. But that said, when I'm facing difficult situations and I don't really want to do it, the thing that inspires me is my wife.
Okay.
When you look at ancient Greek, the muses were all female. If you know what the muses were in Greek mythology, if not, look it up later. It's really neat stories. But they were these godlike creatures that inspired humans to do art, that inspired humans to build things, that inspired humans to achieve things. They were all female. And there's something about feminine inspiration that helps us to accomplish things in a way. Like men, or the masculine, it doesn't have to be a man, but like this masculine desire to accomplish something almost needs to have that desire to act for a feminine energy. It's almost necessary. I think just about without it, I don't think I'd be sitting in a room playing video games like anybody else probably. I really think the desire to give her something better is what motivates me. Okay,
and it's also just like having an accountability partner, having someone who's always there, and also the fact, being the man of the family, a lot of people depend on you. You got to always make sure there's money and things flowing and stuff like that. So that just kind of holds you accountable. And it makes it tougher, but it makes it better almost. You know what I mean?
Right. So my wife, she had very severe morning sickness with our first child. She actually worked in a coffee shop, not unlike this one here in town. And she got super, super sick. And finally I was like, look, just stay home. I need to figure out how to handle you and the kids anyway and provide for things. I'll figure it out. So I convinced her to quit her job and stay home, and I started working trying to pay the bills. I ended up getting electric cut off. We ended up getting kicked out of our first apartment. I didn't do a very good job. I was 21 years old. I wasn't good at it yet. It took a few years to figure it out, and it was failure. But she was a powerful motivation. I wanted to give her a better life than I had. I grew up poor. She grew up poor. We wanted to provide something better. And that was acting through that. It made me better.
Do you think some of the coming up more broke and having to struggle even when you were younger, you learned a lot of life lessons with that, and it kind of helped you throughout adulthood more? You were like, okay, maybe I shouldn't make this financial decision. I see my parents make that mistake. Right. Or you could relate different things, and that kind of made you almost more financially intelligent, you would say?
I think so. I've had an ability to look at others make mistakes and say, I'm not going to do that, which is helpful. But I will also say that there are a lot of bad habits I learned. Like I learned to avoid credit, which is bad. If you've been taught to avoid credit, I don't care if it's Dave Ramsey himself that came down in clouds and said, you should avoid credit, quit that. Credit is a tool. It's not avoiding credit, it's learning to use the tool correctly that matters. And I spent way too many years avoiding credit and trying to build a business without credit, which was all but impossible. And I struggled and I struggled and I struggled. Then eventually I read Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and I learned, wait a minute, credit actually is a tool. If I just use it correctly, I'll do a better job. Does that answer your question fully?
Yeah, that answers it a bit. So just credit, kind of like with the whole credit thing, you didn't learn that until Rich Dad, Poor Dad, but there was like...
My poor family taught me to avoid it. It's bad.
Oh, I get what you're saying.
My poor family taught me, like, I remember starting a sales job when I was 18, commission-only sales job. And I wasn't very good at it. To be clear, I wasn't I was so shy. I remember just sweaty hands and like, I can't talk to people. I was probably 30 years old before I learned to talk in a microphone. I would always get nervous when a microphone was around. But I made myself do those uncomfortable things anyway. But I remember, so I started this commission-only sales job, and my family was like, you should come get a job at the factory with me at Gerber. You'll do way better if you get a job at the factory. You're not going to make any money doing that sales job. And that was the kind of advice my family gave. I didn't follow it because I was a rebellious little punk, so I didn't follow that advice. And that's probably helped me out a lot. I didn't take their advice on that. And I struggled. Like, it would have been easier for me at first going to Gerber and making the whatever $15, $20 an hour, whatever they were paying at the time. That would have been an easier life than what I did at the beginning.
Right.
But I struggled and I learned those skills, and now talking to you is easy because I had to talk to people to exist. It was necessary.
So what are some things that even the audience or 20-year-old students at UFAS could do to put themselves in hard situations? Like you were saying, martial arts is a great thing that teaches you a lot of discipline. I trained jiu-jitsu for very briefly. And, you know, throughout that I learned quite a bit about discipline, and you got to earn, you know, even a 100-pound person could crawl over you and choke you out. So you got to learn that. But is there anything even outside martial arts or maybe martial arts that have taught you like that type of discipline?
So a couple things people should accept. One, conflict is not bad. Many people think, and especially in the last 30 years, that we've been trying to create a conflict-free world where people don't disagree and challenge each other. And when I'm saying conflict, I don't necessarily mean throwing fists, but throwing fists is an element of conflict. It's not bad for you to disagree with your neighbor. It's not bad for someone to have a political different opinion than you. In fact, that's the time you need to become uncomfortable and engage and say, okay, why do they disagree? And what is their perspective on this? Maybe I can learn something. Or maybe I don't understand something fully because they feel so differently than I do about this. It's so easy to go back to your comfort and say, oh, wait a minute, this guy is bad. And I need to disagree with him because of this. That's not the way to handle conflict. We don't learn to handle conflict because we've been taught we could have a world without conflict. And I think that's a fairy tale. We're going to disagree. We are going to have problems. How you handle those conflicts determine a lot about what you learn and what you can overcome.
Has there been a time where you had a conflict and that specific conflict maybe give you a new like perception or a new ideology on something, and you were like, oh, I never realized this, and that just like that disagreement or that standpoint kind of opened your eyes to something new?
Many times. I was stubborn when I was young. I think it's normal. Sub 25 especially, you know, frontal lobe not developed fully. You're a psychology student. I was very stubborn and thought I knew things. And, you know, as you get older, you start to realize, wait a minute, I really don't know things. And you become wiser. And I still feel like I get wiser year after year after year, and I learn a lot every year. But eventually you become comfortable with the fact that you don't know things, and you don't have to know things. At least you can. If you put effort into it, you can become comfortable with that. You have skills, you have ideas about directions things can happen in, but you don't have to know specifically everything anymore. I think that's a good place to seek and try to be.
What are the 3 best skills that you think everyone needs to know, especially the younger generation, people like my age, 18, 19-year-old, 20-year-old kids? Maybe like 3 or 4 skills that you could think of that are going away that this world still like deeply needs.
Knowing how to like do work, mess up, and start again. When we try to hire somebody your age, and we have a couple people your age working for us right now on houses, and they feel like they need to be instructed on how to do it properly. They don't, like, you can't say, could you go take care of this thing for me? Well, how do I do it? Well, just pick up that tool, do this, cut the board or whatever. Okay, well, I don't know how to do it. I know, just try. And we want you to try. And yes, you're going to mess up, and yes, you're going to fail. You need to become comfortable with trying, failing, and then starting again. Trying, failing, and starting again. And I think it was an unintended consequence of grading children A, B, C, D, G, you know, or A, B, C, D, and F for so long, and you would go home and your parents would get mad at you. You made a C. Why do you make a C?
Right.
You need to do better. And you'd get in trouble for making slight mistakes, making errors on stuff you didn't know how to do. And what they thought they were teaching you is good work ethic. But instead what they accidentally taught you is don't do something unless you know how to do it. That unintended teaching. And so now we have so many people that aren't comfortable starting something until they fully know how to do it. And you will never fully know how to do a home remodel. Every home I do is different. Every time I crawl under a house, I'm going to encounter something different. My previous experience helps, but I don't know what I'm going to find. There's no video that's going to teach you 100% of what you can know. You will have to improvise part of it. You will have to make mistakes and figure it out. Young people need to get okay with that. 2, young people need to learn that just because grumpy or old people are saying, hey, you need to do this differently, doesn't mean they dislike you. Me and Shay grew up, Gen X. We get into fights on the playgrounds, punch each other in the face, and we'd be best friends at the end of the day. We would call each other's moms things that you can't say on social media. We did all those things, and then we'd give each other high fives afterwards and go hang out and play video games. Like, that was just our generation. It was just different. The idea of not bullying wasn't even a thought. It was everybody's going to be bullied. Who can bully the best? Like, it was bullying competitions. You didn't get in trouble for bullying. Nobody did. In fact,
You got a smile there. Everybody thinks you're very cornered. So
Very cornered?
yeah, you're like very nervous. And
I'm not going to lie to y'all. I am a little nervous. But hey, like you said, we're getting over it. This is the first episode overcoming it.
How similar am I to the way you see me on TV or on, I say TV. You see, you can tell I'm an 80s. How similar am I to the guy you see on social media?
To be fair, most of the time I've been here, we've been on social media, but you're the exact same. I mean, yeah. He's not faking, guys. He's for real. But even with, to go back to it, with a lot of these 20-year-olds who work for you, these younger people, because their mind kind of gets the ABC thing, like you were talking about, and they're instilled I cannot fail, I cannot mess up. What are some of the things that you teach them to be it's okay, or instill in them rather to just let them know that it's okay to mess up, it's all right?
I'm not good at teaching this yet. I've been trying to figure that out. If you saw my New Year's resolution video, this was going to be the year I figured out how to help young people like you come to work for me and succeed. And I've yet to figure that out. I'm trying. I'm putting effort into it right now. But that's me getting out of my comfort zone. I'm having to hand off jobs. It's still difficult to get people to take on tasks that they don't know how to do. And I can't give you all the instruction because, again, it's going to be different every time. There's not a perfect manual for this is how you do it. I can give you a general idea, but at some point you have to, and I don't know how to translate that yet. I'm hoping to figure it out by the end of the year, but I just don't know.
Is there one thing?
I learned from our mistakes more than our successes.
Right.
And I think you've hinted at it a couple of times, and I definitely don't want to interrupt the chat there.
No.
But, what's happened, I think, is that the Gen Xers, we fell on our face a bunch of times, and no one really taught us how to do it, and we learned how to do it, and we failed and failed and failed and failed, and then finally, oh man, that's the right way to do that. And then we got some direction. It's like, oh, that's very similar to something I've done in the past, and man, it's so much easier when you just pick yourself up, dust yourself off, try again. But the fear of failure, like Shayne was saying, well, I got a C. Oh, I got an A, Mom, but what did the A really mean?
Right.
You completed an assignment.
Right.
Did you fail? No, you didn't. So that's kind of where we sit.
I would say also as Gen X, we were the first generation where both parents worked, left us alone at home, and there was no helicopter parenting. It was absolutely normal, 7, 8 years old, for me to come home and there'd be nobody in the house. I was the oldest. My younger sister would be out with my mom or whatever. She would have been 2 or 3, and I would be home alone. No idea where my mom is. You can't call her on the cell phone. No idea when she's coming home. And so you just go outside, ride on your bike, and I might literally 7, 8 years old go a mile away from the house into the woods and play with my friends, and she'd get home and I wouldn't be there, and she didn't freak out and send out a search party. I was just gone until night, and I'd come home when I was hungry, and that was normal. So we had to figure it all out for ourselves. That was our generation. And we have trouble relating to a generation that's always been supervised, that's always had somebody there, hey, do this, hey, do that. It's very hard for us to understand, why can't you just do this when I leave you alone? But you've not been left alone much. You are supervised on tasks. That's your generation. That's millennials and zillennials, Generation Z, I guess, as well. That's just how it is.
Yeah, and I know it comes with being uncomfortable, but what are some things, specific things that you can do to actually fail more that you would recommend for the younger generation?
Make yourself uncomfortable. Learn new skills. Martial arts is a great example. You come to a martial arts school, no matter how big and strong you think you are,
Yeah.
you're going to learn you fail real fast.
Yeah.
You go take up a hobby, roller skating. I love roller skating, but if you've never done it before, you're going to fall. Go skiing, go mountain climbing, go cave exploring, go do stuff you haven't done before that you don't know how to do, and learn and mess up and let yourself discover, wait a minute, nobody cares when I make a mistake.
Yeah.
Nobody's there to say, I can't believe you messed up. You go to the martial arts gym and I choke you out or something, nobody's going to be like, ha ha, you let him choke you. Like, we're all like, hey man, good try. Let's try it this way. You know, that's, and you've been in that environment now, so you
Yeah.
see it becomes actually supportive of failure. That's the best thing I think you can do, is get yourself out of your room, out of your focused environments that are, I guess this is another generational thing. You can go online and you can find through a social media like what we're on, people that agree with you about everything, people that are interested with you in everything. That is a privilege no generation has had before. For me and Shay here, every one of our friends played different sports, did different things,
Yeah.
wanted to participate in different activities, and they were the only friends that were within a few blocks of us, so they're the only friends that we encountered. So we had to have varied interests and outside of our comfort zone on tasks a lot more. Now you can hyper-fixate on an interest, and you can find enough people online to interact with socially to be able to hyper-focus. Now that has strengths in that it means we can push the boundaries of that interest way further than we could when there was only one kid interested in it.
Yeah.
Now you can work and collaborate with 100 people that are super interested in this technology or this thing. So it's got its strengths, but it does have the weakness, and it allows you to not get out of your comfort zone as much and not be pushed into different skills. So learn new skills.
Just learn the hardest skills that you can essentially pick up. And does that teach you some new type of like mental philosophy? Like, okay, no matter what, I can always do this hard thing, or no
Right.
matter what, you know, like you say, Shayne is great.
Yeah.
Is that kind of like where you got that even? It's just doing the hard things and like, you know what I
No.
mean? Would that make sense?
So Shayne is Great came from my Gmail account. So Gmail was originally invitation only.
Okay.
You had to be invited to get a Gmail address. And I was working in website development and stuff at the time, and I got an invite very early on. Gmail was very new, and I thought, I'm going to get Shayne@gmail.com because my spelling has a Y in it. I was like, there's no way anybody currently has that. And so I went to get it, and it was already taken. And I was like, and so then in just a quick moment of frustration, I was like, well, Shayne is Great. And I registered that email address, and that's been my handle ever since. It was,
Okay.
it was just frustration on not being able to get just the clean Shayne
Yeah.
at Gmail that I thought I would be able to get.
Has like doing, like you said, roller skating, like taught you something besides like, I mean, obviously, no matter what, if you fail, you can redo it, you can keep trying and just keep going. But has that just learning to fail and redo something like given you some type of philosophy or just some type of understanding that takes to learn like over time and with age that a 20-year-old might not understand yet?
Lifting a heavy weight makes your muscles get stronger because of the discomfort and such. Learning new skills, roller skating, pushing yourself to the limit in that, lets your brain exercise itself and become more adaptable, more capable of learning new things. It's not just the coordination, it's not just the balance, it's not just the strength, it's the adaptability of the brain. The brain learns how to learn. When you don't let your brain learn for a long enough period of time, your brain gets bad at learning.
Yeah.
So when you give your brain the same information over and over again, you watch the same news channel with the same news reporters, you follow the same kind of content, the algorithm sends that to you, it makes your brain lazy. It makes your brain where it doesn't get good at learning and it doesn't adapt easily. You need to be challenged. You need to be uncomfortable in skill. You need to be uncomfortable in ideas. If all the information you watch agrees with your ideas and doesn't make you uncomfortable, then I challenge you to make yourself uncomfortable. Watch some content that's politically different than yours. Watch some people that invest in a different way than you invest. I invest in commercial or in residential real estate. I've started watching the last couple of years commercial real estate investing content and trying to get understanding that, and have been thinking, how do I invest in commercials successfully so I can learn new things? But I need to expose myself to that kind of information and make my brain learn it, whether it wants to or not.
Just learning the most difficult information you can at all times.
It doesn't have to be difficult, it just needs to be different.
Okay.
There's not a lot more value. Like, you don't need to go learn astrophysics. You don't need to know how the event horizon on a black hole works. If you're
Right.
interested in it, go learn it.
Right.
But that's not something you're not going to gain a lot of value from that in most cases. So pushing yourself to the limits of what your brain can comprehend as a philosophical exercise might have value, but it's you're not probably going to make more money as a result of doing that. You're probably not going to change your day-to-day as a result of doing that.
Right. Okay, and one of these questions I have on here is, what mistakes have costed you the most time in your life?
Oh, man.
I know
Wow.
the answer to that one.
Let's see. Wow, good question. So when my children were very young, I wanted stability for my wife. My wife felt very insecure. We got kicked out of an apartment. And I had been very entrepreneurial, and I'd started a couple businesses, and I'd failed, and I'd learned a lot about that. And I feel like I was very close to making a successful business. But I decided to settle down with a local company that was owned by somebody else and work for him. And I helped him build the business, and I learned a lot, and it was good. There were a lot of good things that came from it. But in hindsight, I ended up working for him for close to 8 years and helping him to build his dream, which was different than my dream. And I had a more stable environment. My wife could feel more secure. My kids were more stable during that time. But I didn't grow that much during that time. I grew a little. I was still out of my comfort zone in some areas. But I think I would have grown a lot more had I stayed more independent. And that was several years of my life doing that.
Staying more independent. Have you had mentors, though, in your life that have just taught you something that stuck with you that you like to pass down to the future generation?
I've had many mentors.
Right.
Nobody does this without mentors and without, nobody does anything without other people being involved.
Right.
Like, arguably maybe a Nikola Tesla. There's a few super geniuses out there, but those are not the norm. The norm to become successful is to have mentors. So, my martial arts instructor, he was a mentor in my life early on. He taught me I could take more punishment than I thought I could take, and I could do things I didn't think I could do. I remember starting martial arts and I'm really bad at balance, and he's like, no, nobody's bad at balance, you just haven't practiced. No, I'm really bad. Nope, you're gonna learn. And he would be forceful, but he taught me and I learned. I've had mentors in business. When I first decided to get into real estate investing, I talked to a couple people that had a bunch of properties in town, and I still have mentors in that, people that have been doing it longer, that I'll call up and say, hey, what do you think of this deal? And they'll look at it with me and they'll give me a feel like that's normal. You should definitely seek out people who have already made those mistakes. What you shouldn't do is go ask your mom, who's only bought 2 houses in her life, about your real estate investing.
Yeah.
You shouldn't go talk to your friend who's been in 10 bad relationships and never had a successful girlfriend about relationship mentorship. Find somebody that actually has a successful relationship, ask them relationship advice. Find somebody who's a real estate investor that's successful, ask them real estate investing advice. Ask advice from the people that have succeeded. And those people aren't just gonna give you advice until you ask, but the people who have failed in it will give you advice without asking all the time.
Right.
You'll find that over and over in life, is the people that are most ready to give you advice are the people that are least likely to be helpful, and they've failed at the thing they're giving you advice on over and over and over again.
For young kids at UFAS, for example, what are some things that they can do to get themselves out there more and network, whether that be in the business field or their own field, or even with real estate or whatever it may be, besides like social media per se?
Come meet people like us. You messaged and reached out to me.
Yeah.
Now you and I met, we're hanging out, we're talking. There's an intimidation about going around people that are older and more experienced.
Yeah, a little bit.
This goes to a comfort thing. Get out of your comfort zone. Go to whatever event is happening. There are networking events at the Chamber of Commerce. There's a Burns dinner next week in Van Buren. I may go to that. There will be a bunch of firemen wearing kilts, playing bagpipes, and celebrating Robert Burns. And if that doesn't sound like fun to you, then you guys need to reevaluate your fun sensors, because that sounds like a great time. There'll be scotch. It's just going to be a great time.
Right.
And you may not meet anybody there that is helpful to you at that moment, but you'll be uncomfortable. You'll adapt, and you may make a friend there that can connect you to different opportunities, that can connect you to different things. But what you'll learn is anywhere you go, other people are sitting around somewhere thinking, man, I wish someone would come talk to me. I feel awkward right now. I wish someone would come talk to me. And when you just sit down and talk to that person, you can make their entire day, and you can create a bond and a connection and a friendship that lasts for years. And they're local, they're helpful. You don't have to pre-qualify them. I think that's the thing with your generation is you'll go to a social media profile before you talk to somebody, and you'll look at their interests. You'll see what movies they like. You'll see whatever, and you'll have them all pre-qualified of, okay, they're in this box, they're this way, they're this way. I better not say anything about that. And then you'll go talk to them under that kind of circumstance. Quit doing that. Just take a person as a total blank slate and interact with them, and you'd be amazed at how much better that really is.
Yeah. What's been a time that you failed at something? It could be anything, just whatever you want to choose. And then what lesson did you derive from that experience?
I fell and broke my arm roller skating 2 years ago, and I found out that hurts, and I probably should be wearing the wrist pads that everybody's told me my whole life you should be wearing. So now I wear my wrist guards anytime I'm roller skating, so that changed the behavior. But I'll give you a more probably business and helpful thing.
Thank you.
I started a business about 4 years ago with someone. I invested with a person, and he indicated that he had the money to be able to fund everything, and we signed all the agreements as partners as though he were funding the business. And then he got into a divorce situation and had to pull back his money, and we ended up going belly up as a business, and we ended up with lawsuits from some of the contracts we signed, and I was just as liable as he was in that situation. So I've learned, not to not do business or not try business with people, but I've learned just because a person indicates they have the money and seems like they have the money, if you're going to invest with them, make sure the money is available and in an account before you sign your obligations, because that can be a very painful lesson. And that was a painful lesson. It was an expensive lesson to learn.
What are some things you look in for, like in a person, if you're going to invest with them or invest in them?
Could you say that one more time, please?
What are some qualities or traits that you look at in a person when you're going to invest with them?
Not a doctor.
Not a doctor.
If they're not a doctor, that's a big plus. I had a rule that I would never invest with a doctor. I broke that rule with that last time, and I ended up in a lawsuit. But yeah, doctors, they get in a habit of a couple things. One, they are very high income earners.
Yeah.
And so they use income to solve problems.
Yeah.
Okay, and that can work for them because they have a high income. But when you get a really expensive problem that exceeds their income, or they get injured and can't work for a while and that changes their income, that can quickly shift that. And it's not necessarily that, and this isn't true for all doctors, but as a whole, that's just a case. Their business capability is often tied to their high salary.
Yeah.
And so I look for people when I'm going to be investing, people that can work with very limited budgets, people that understand the principles of rapid development, which is a software thing, but I apply it to houses, which is a method of finishing something in a faster way. It involves a little less planning and a little bit more action, and then improvising through that action. You can get, and it's good to have somebody different than you, like me and my partner Shay here. He's more of an engineer, I'm more of an artist. We approach things differently.
Yeah.
It's important to have a different perspective. So you don't want someone just like you, but you want somebody that can work with your style and you can work with their style, and you can meet and build on each other's strengths and weaknesses. I think that makes a successful partnership. If they're just a person you get along with and are friends with and you all agree on everything, that's probably not your business partner.
So like essentially, would you say with the doctors, it's kind of because they don't have their money working for them, and they're working for their money essentially, versus even those people with limited incomes, they're investing, they're putting their money in the right spots. Like you said, you came from a very, poor background, so it might have been harder, so you had to put your money in those spots, so you might see a little bit of yourself in those types of people.
Maybe, and I'm just picking on doctors. There are some great doctors and everything, but as a general rule, I'm wary of people that have always been in high income. And that I see using money to solve their problems. Okay, so I want a person that can solve problems with or without money. Sometimes it makes sense to solve it with money. Sometimes it makes sense to solve it through changing processes or doing a different task. So that adaptability of just throwing, and this is the problem with government, why everybody has a problem with government, is our government, well, we got a problem, let's just, we'll spend $10 million more on it. It's not even their money, it's just money they get to sign for that us taxpayers pay. So That's the ultimate example of that, just throwing money at problems. And you also see it from a positive perspective sometimes, or a perceived positive. You'll look at people saying, well, we need to improve the schools. Well, we need to spend more money on them.
Yeah.
And their objective is, if we spend more money on the schools will be better. That's trying to solve a problem with money. And it's objectively false. When we spend more money on schools, we don't get better results. That's just not necessarily the thing that happens. Now, sometimes spending more can make it better, but it can't be the only thing that we do.
Would you say that having problems is almost a good thing? Because for example, you think very, very systematically and very thoughtfully on things. So having a lot of problems, is more opportunities to learn to think that way. So would you say almost for 20-year-olds, like you said, go out there and fail? Would you almost say go out there and find problems too? And what type of problems would you recommend for the younger generation to put on themselves almost?
Get into some businesses you don't know, work places, and work there for 6 months to a year till you get comfortable, and then go look for another career you haven't done before. I've actually seen studies about this, that the people that change careers every 6 months to a year at a young age tend to be way more successful, because they adapt to so many different circumstances. They learn so many different things. The first few years, it's not. But when you look at them in their 30s and 40s, now they have a plethora of skills. It made me think of the Three Amigos. Some people...
Seas don't make a great sailor,
Yeah, right, exactly.
Seas do, so.
Yep, that's putting you out of a comfort zone over and over again, seeing different processes. Even if it's different retailers, you'll see Walmart's approach to retail is probably a lot different than a Lowe's way of doing retail, or a fancy Dillard's or something like that. A catalog store's version of retail is going to be different. And learning those different approaches gives you a perspective when you look at a problem. I want to sell retail shirts right now. I have my Vampire Mare shirts available at my vampiremare.com. I want to sell these shirts. I have a little bit of retail experience. I have a little bit of web experience. I have a little bit of some of these things. So how do I put that together to be able to do that, to build this environment? If you've only worked for one company for 15 years or in one field for 15 years, you don't have as many different ways of looking at the problem, and you're limited as a result.
So put yourself in as many situations as you can to learn new skills.
Yeah, now that means learning though. That doesn't mean I'm just going to go work 3 or 4 months until they make me leave because I didn't do a good job.
Right.
Learn to make yourself valuable in those companies. They're hiring you to better their company and themselves. If you're not helping to better, then you haven't learned the job.
Okay. And then, what do people misunderstand about building real independence?
They think money is dollars in a bank.
Yeah.
They think when they hear somebody is a billionaire, they picture them opening their bank account and seeing 1,000,000,000,000 in the bank account, and that is not what a billionaire's bank account looks like. Assets create independence. Owning things that can make you money create independence. Having a lot of money in the bank does not create independence. That will never you will not save your way to independence. If you looked at your bank account right now and there was $1 million in it, you are not independent. That has not helped you at all. Taking that $1 million and putting it into things that make you money, that will create independence for you.
What would you say are the best things for young 20-year-olds to invest in? I mean, themselves, just a Roth, or financially speaking, but obviously themselves. And then with themselves, what skills would you say are the most valuable currently?
Okay, so the most valuable skills are the skills that the fewest people want to do or are capable of doing always. If everybody does it, it's not valuable. Graphic design, I'll use this as an example. In Fort Smith, UFAS used to create a lot of graphic design students every year that graduated. And when we would want to hire a web developer, we would have 30, 40, 50 applicants for graphic design positions. And that means we can pay them close to minimum wage because somebody will work for very little when there's that many to choose from. The fact that so many exist makes the price go down for the service. Anytime you're going in a career field where a lot of people do it, you're not going to make as much, unless there's just a huge demand for the thing. So future things that are going to need a lot of demand, medical. Obviously, we're going to need a lot of nursing and everything. The boomers are getting into the ages where hospice and things like that for them is becoming significant. So that's a good financial boon for a little while. But any career that people don't want to do, or that there's not a lot of people that have the skills to do. Real estate investing is a great example, though. You always hear housing crisis, housing crisis, housing crisis. What does that tell me? If you're building houses, you're probably in a good career path.
Mm-hmm. When you were young and you first started investing in some of the more beat up or tore down houses, what were the things you would tell yourself to just know that this is temporary, you know, and eventually this is going to be a real house and I'm going to make money off this? Because I'm sure it could be very intimidating or scary investing in something like that. Like I would assume you started off when you were younger. I'm not entirely sure. Please correct me if I'm wrong. But with that being said, because I'm wanting to get into this type of stuff eventually, and it'd be very intimidating. But what are some things that you just think about and remind yourself of when it does get scary financially or things do get hard or uncomfortable?
Well, again, my wife is my motivation.
Okay.
So just to be clear, that is really my motivation. I am not working for myself. I'm working to give her the best life that I can. My children and my wife, I want them to have more opportunity than me. That said, I've been real estate investing about 7 years.
Yeah.
So not a long time. When you're working on a stinky house, you're underneath it, you're having to crawl in the mud and there's that much space and you're operating a jack or you're running plumbing or those things. It can be lonely, it can be dark, but what I try to do, I guess, is imagine how this is going to work. I try to imagine a family living in that house. I try to imagine, the mom, if I'm working on a pipe or something, like I'm imagining the mom upstairs doing dishes and the kids playing in the back. Like I try to imagine almost like a 50s sitcom imitation fake family thing, and picture them using this house and thriving and succeeding and being happy with the things that I've done. I think that helps me, but sometimes it can be easy to get down on yourself, especially in those difficult situations.
Right. What are like three of the worst qualities that you see in the younger generation that are easily fixable?
3 of the worst qualities that are easily fixable. Wow. Okay.
Good question.
That's a really good question. Okay. The conflict thing we talked about earlier. Your generation has difficulty accepting that conflict is a necessity, and as a result, you have difficulty dealing with conflict. So getting exposed to healthy conflict, I think, is super important. Okay. That goes back to challenging yourself to opinions that are different than your own. Letting people tell you something different and not arguing and saying, no, you're wrong. Like just allowing that information to go in and say, let me just sit on this for a while. Maybe there's some element of truth there. Maybe I'm missing something. Allow yourself to expose yourself to that. I think physical conflict is something everybody should experience. I truly believe everybody should do at least a little bit of martial arts. Not necessarily because you need to defend yourself in a fight, but you learn something when you get punched in the face and it's not that big a deal. You learn something in here that you just about can't learn otherwise. Like, I don't know how to teach somebody until somebody comes at me and I kick them and they go down and they're like, oh, and you can see like their brain changes and they realize this is different than I thought it would be. And it sucks in a way I didn't expect it to suck, but it's okay in a way I didn't expect it to be okay. And you get both of those elements, and you can read about it, you can watch movies about it, but until you felt that kick or you felt that punch to the face, you don't know a fundamental thing about humanity. It's just missing from you. And then the third thing I would say is there is not an easy way to fix your problems. That includes all the substances and the help me's and the articles from psych websites or whatever you're reading. There isn't an easy way to fix everything and make it better.
Yeah.
Okay? You need to be uncomfortable. You don't, like, people call me or people message me all the time, well, how do I quit sucking on the fumigation things that are popular in Oklahoma, the little sticks that burn. I can't say that on one of these social medias. So how do I stop doing this? Well, just quit. Yeah, but it's hard. You're right.
Yeah.
You're right, it is.
Yeah.
Quit looking for ways to make it easy and just know that it sucks and do it anyway. It's going to suck to do your first house. Do it anyway. It's going to suck to lose 100 pounds.
Yeah.
Do it anyway. And you can. and quit looking for the easy ways out. Quit thinking if I take this pill, it'll be easier. If I do this, now, does that mean I'm against all medications or anything? Don't hear that. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is a lot of people feel like they can cheat their way to something better.
Yeah.
And sometimes you just need to suck it up for a few years, and
Yeah.
you'll find yourself in a better place when you're willing to accept that.
This does kind of follow back on the last question a little bit, but what's something that your generation you would say is very good at or almost perfect even that has just been lost in my generation?
Ooh, my generation is perfect at something. Gen X is not perfect.
Right.
So we were screwed up in a lot of ways. I mean, we were literally unsupervised for a long time. And a lot of bad things, we got into mischief, we did some stuff, but we learned a lot from that. We learned that we fail and we don't share our failures. We don't just go about and say, if nobody talks about it, it just goes away. In encouraging openness, and I think this is a good quality of millennials and Zoomers, is I feel like they are open about their failures and they share it with other people and they can learn and collaborate around their failures. And I think that's great. Whereas we hid our failures and we kept them from others so people wouldn't make fun of us as much and wouldn't bully us as much. So we learned to hide our failures. But in hiding our failures, we developed the ability to succeed without others interfering with what we're doing. We learned to become invisible almost in the things that we were accomplishing. I think more than any generation, the Gen Xers excel at, there's something going on over there that we need taken care of. And you mention that to somebody from my generation and it's just going to get fixed. Right. And there won't be a, hey, look at me doing this, or it'll just happen. And you'll be like, oh, wow, that must have been easy. And they may have, it could have been the worst thing they've ever done. They're not going to act any different than if it was the easiest thing they've ever done. It's just, they're not going to burden you with the problems of fixing that problem. They're going to do it almost invisibly.
Yeah.
And I think that makes for a less stressful environment when you're working around people of that generation. And I think that's probably one of the finer qualities of that generation of humanity, is the ability to keep the environment when everything is going to hell around you as calm as possible.
Yeah, I do have a question I want to ask you.
Go ahead.
With the whole conflict thing, and you think conflict's a good thing, is that why you do the vampire persona? Is that part of it? No?
No, the vampire thing entirely came about from promoting my Vampire Den Airbnb. That's it. It was just some videos I did promoting that, and it's, well, I don't know. It really started years ago. I got bitten by a bat about 12 years ago, and 13 years ago. And a few years after that, people started calling me a vampire. Like, I did have several people doing that. And then I started the Vampire Airbnb. I don't know if it was related to that. And the vampire persona came out a little bit more as part of promotion for that. And at some point, you quit arguing. Like, if people say, you're a great athlete. You're a great athlete. And everywhere you go, people say, you're just a great athlete. Eventually, you're just going to be like, I guess I'm a great athlete, Yeah. People called me a vampire for a very long time, and at some point, you quit arguing. So I guess that's the way it went.
Would you say it helps you get out there more for like running with mayor and things of that nature? Yeah. Just how we were talking about earlier, standing out and different things like that. Even though you might have got scrutinized a lot for it, it did get you out there more. Yeah. And I'm sure it honestly, did that ever like help with things like building confidence and things of that nature as well, even like internally and mentally kind of flip your view on things?
I'm going to avoid this vampire question and circle back to it. I'll tell you a story about a time I was going to talk to some investment bankers about a website 10 years ago when I worked in website development. And I showed up in a disco shirt, leather jacket, big collar. And I walked into the meeting at this bank, and I'd never met any of these people before. And they're like, who are you? And I said, well, I'm the guy here to talk to you about websites. Like, dressed like that? And I said, yeah. And confidence, simple. And they're like, you got to be kidding. And I'm like, I can leave if you don't want to talk. No, you're here, come on in. So I'm already there's already a negative perception on that. Now, this is the moment that matters. If you're going to be different, you have to be able to deliver at that moment. And so I present it, I deliver it, and they're like, oh, wow. I can't believe we're going to do this. Let's do it. And we shake hands, we do a deal, and made thousands and thousands of dollars off doing the website with this. It was a great business deal. They were happy, we were all successful, everything worked out. Had I not been able to deliver within 2 or 3 minutes of that, it would have been all over. So yes, it gives me a marketing advantage, but only if I can deliver.
Yeah.
Only if I can present the information in a way that people can understand and people can relate to and connect with them. So it's an advantage for a brief moment. If I fail during that moment, then it's a big risk. It's a big negative.
Right. When you're delivering things, how do you do it so good? Like even the way you're delivering this podcast right now, like we're talking, I mean, it's pretty good, and I would say you're pretty charismatic with it. So what are some things that you've done, like being uncomfortable? Like right now, I'm sure I'm stuttering over my words and stuff, so I'm sure they notice that, but I'm trying to overcome it. So one day I could speak as fluently like you and stuff like that. So did you have to, was there a point where you were kind of like in a simulated position like me and you weren't as well spoken, or is it just something you almost had naturally almost?
Oh, no, I was terrible at communicating. I
Yeah.
was so bad. I was the little nerdy kid that information dumped,
Yeah.
and I still information dump sometimes. But I got into a commission-only sales job, and if I did not sell, I did not make money. 18, 19, 20, for 3 years I did a commission-only sales job, and I had to learn to communicate with ordinary people to make money, or I could not pay the bills. That made me learn to pay attention to the way people receive the information that I'm giving. Instead of just thinking about the information that I'm giving, I had to think about how are they receiving this information. And I was still not good at it after 3 years, but it established a beginning for me. Then I went into business, and I had to be careful because I knew more about the subject than the person I'm talking to in most cases. So I could go on and on and on about this information. And instead I had to bring myself back and say, what are the pieces they need to be able to make an informed decision? How do I give them just those pieces? That way they don't get overwhelmed. And I had to start breaking it down into steps. And just over years of breaking down things into simpler and simpler methods and learning how to take a complex thing like internet marketing and website development and break it down into 5 or 6 things that your average mom and pop place that sells yarn or something could understand. That developed that skill. So I didn't have it starting off, just like I didn't have the ability to punch and kick starting off in martial arts. And I put myself into that circumstance and I failed, and I put it in and I failed and I failed and I failed. But then I learned a little, and I failed a little less, and I failed a little less, and then I learned a little more, and then I failed even less, and eventually you get good at it.
Would you say the key to success is essentially just failing, learning, and then just repeat?
I don't know anybody that succeeded without failing way more than they succeeded.
Yeah.
Avoiding failure, trying to avoid failure, is the surest way to make sure you always are a failure.
Yeah.
The way to fail is to make sure you're avoiding failure. That's the guaranteed way to fail.
Yeah. And no matter how much you succeed, there's always going to be problems. So would you say that almost even motivates you to keep going, besides your wife and stuff like that? Because I don't want to keep circling back to the same questions or nothing. But is there even before you had your wife, was there ulterior motivators that kind of helped you or drive you? Because I'm young, and I'm not, there might be people watching as well that don't have a wife or a significant other. So what are some things that might be able to drive the audience with things like that? Interests.
So I had an interest in punk and heavy metal music, and I wanted to bring those kinds of bands. So I started a business when I was 18, 19, before my wife, bringing in the bands that I wanted to be able to see. So I picked an interest, and I pursued, how do I make this interest more accessible to other people in ways that it wasn't accessible at the time. So find an interest that you enjoy and pursue that. Pursue different aspects of that, and I think that'll probably get you close to where you need to be. But and you'll fail at it. I failed at that. I had concerts that I booked, and I agreed to pay the band $1,000, and we got $700 in ticket sales on it. And I'm like, writing a check for $300 at a time when I do not have $300, and it's, I had those moments, those failures, and I learned from them. And you learn that it's not a big deal to fail, and that's one of the best lessons you can learn.
Has there been a time where you've lost a lot of money in something that you failed at, but when you look back on it now, you're almost glad that you did it because of the lesson you derived from that? Absolutely.
Most of the times I've lost money on things and made mistakes, I'm happy that I learned those lessons, with very few exceptions. And then it's still limited to, right now looking back, I'm still disappointed in that failure, 10 years from now, I might be glad that I had that failure then.
Yeah.
So I'm not certain I won't be glad for those. And it's, again, not glad that it failed in that I'm happy, but I'm happy I learned from the failure.
Yeah. So what mindset shift did you have to go from these failures are okay, I needed these failures to happen in my life for me to get in the position that I want to get in? What mind shift change did you have in your life to realize that? Because I know it probably takes some maturity and time and failing over and over and over again to be able to realize something like that. But was there a specific event or just a moment where you realized that, wow, I need to change, this is happening for a reason, and I'm going to look back and I'm going to realize that I needed to fail and I needed to learn?
Good question. I can't easily answer that right off the side. Good question. There are so many different moments of failure where you're learning significant things, but you're not always aware of them at the time. A lot of times it's looking back on them much further back where you see the value in it. Failure is one of those things that doesn't feel good at first.
Right. Right.
I guess I'll take a time when I was almost blackballed from business in Fort Smith. I had been working in web development for a few years, had a number of clients. I built Chamber of Commerce websites, and I was in business referral networks and other things. And we had a fundamental disagreement with another one of the partners in this organization. She wanted to stick with the website focus, and I wanted to shift to social media because I could see social media becoming the future. It was very early on. Facebook had been around, but it hadn't been around a long time. And I decided, let's go forward on social media instead. Let's push everybody this direction. And she fundamentally disagreed. She was selling good web ads, and I said all this, and she decided she needed to get me out of the way so that I didn't talk the investors out of funding the website more. And it was amazing how quickly a person with influence and trust in other people could cut out relationships I thought I had, and could cause people to pull the plug on projects with me and financially hurt me. And how vindictive our community can get, or how quickly people could turn on you over the words of trying to be around another. And so that made me very aware, and I learned very quickly, like, oh my gosh, I have to be cautious with my relationships because they can turn suddenly, even without cause necessarily, if somebody thinks it's financially beneficial. And it caused me to become much more open with everybody. That's one of the reasons why I'm probably so open on social media about everything I do. That's why I'm so open about, weird features in my Airbnbs or this. I talk about everything I do as openly as I can so that there won't be any surprises. And that's why transparency is so important to me. If you want to be a part of me having this conversation, more to lie. Anytime I do something, I want to be as transparent as I can. Because if people think they don't know something about me, it can change in an instant if it's led incorrectly. So I want people to know me. I want people to know what I'm really doing.
Would you say that's helped you with the political things as well as being transparent? Because I know a lot of people, when they think about politicians, for example, they think of, lies or this or that. But one thing I've noticed about you is you're really transparent. Like even with the water slides, or I saw a video about the Women's History Museum and how you want to keep it, stuff like that is like very transparent. I know a lot of people in my generation can relate to things like that because like in my composition 1 class, they finally got me in that class, but they talk about stuff like that. They're like, what do you think about the water slides? They'll talk about local issues, and what you say is a lot of what like people in my generation say. So would you say like the transparency has kind of helped with the trust, or even on TikTok, to really get someone to actually follow you and buy your stuff, they gotta like you, and it all starts with getting someone to not necessarily be a fan, but to support you, and to support anyone, you gotta trust them, or you gotta admire something about them. So would you say that being transparent and just being honest about everything, because there's been a lot of things that you've shared with me today even that I feel like, just meeting someone off the internet, they might not share per se, and it's been a lot of valuable advice, so I really appreciate that as well.
You're welcome. I would tell anybody these things if they asked, but I don't always know the things I need to tell somebody.
Right.
Thank you so much. Gracias.
You're welcome.
Reword that question one more time. Sometimes it helps me to hear a question reworded.
So like with being transparency and just with like TikTok or social media and with politics as well. Do you think being transparent, being open with and honest with people has made them feel more like trust with you, so they're more likely to per se like support you with your campaign or support you with TikTok or support you in these different avenues? Even though in Fort Smith, like, I'll be honest, some of my friends and stuff that I've told, they're like, oh, is that the vampire guy? And I'm like, yeah, but who cares, bro? He's being himself, and that's what I really like about him, you know? He doesn't care what people think. He's himself, and he's honest, and he talks about this on his TikTok, and he's really open and honest. And I feel like he's the type of person that's gonna do what he says, you know, and he's honest. He's not gonna lie to you. And you build that with your audience by talking about them with these things, different political ideas, or, oh, this happened with my Airbnb, and you're very honest. And even with videos like that on TikTok, it helps people like that are my age, because if I were to rent a house or buy a house and rent it out, I could almost like go to your channel and look at how to do it, like almost, because you drop so much advice on stuff like that. So being transparent, to wrap back to my question after saying all that, would you say being transparent has kind of helped you like grow your political campaign and your social media presence?
I think it's absolutely helped me to grow my social media presence. And my social media presence existed before my political campaign. And to be clear, I had no political aspirations when I started social media.
Okay.
Like, there was no, like, someday I'm going to run for office. I feel like I had to step up and take the position to run for mayor because of how many problems I was seeing in the city that I don't feel like were being addressed. It wasn't because I wanted another problem in that regard.
Yeah.
It was because at some point, again, I guess that Gen X-y kind of mentality kicks in, and it's like, there's a problem, I need to take care of it.
Yeah.
How do I take care of it without causing anybody else as much stress as possible? How do I, I'll carry the stress myself, and I'll carry whatever's, and I'll try to fix that. But the transparency absolutely makes a difference. And people can see when I will talk about, well, my S*X dungeon house that I'm selling in Van Buren. When I sold that, millions of people saw it. If I'm transparent about that, what won't I be transparent about?
Right.
Why would I have a reason to lie to you about other things when I'm being as open as possible about these things that most people wouldn't?
Right.
And I think people pick up on that. They're not foolish. People in general can realize, okay, wow, he's legitimately willing to share the secrets of how to buy houses without credit. He's willing to teach me how to get a better credit score. He's not gatekeeping information. He's not saying, if you join my program for $30 a month, I'll tell you how to do this. There's none of that. I just freely give as much as I can on information, and people pick up that that's happening, and then they realize this is helpful. And then we develop a trust. They succeed. I have a guy that I've helped to buy. He followed my TikTok 2 years ago, and now he has 9 houses in Fort Smith. He's 23, 24, maybe 25, somewhere. He's very young, and he's successful.
Yeah.
Because he started a program and kind of followed that. And now if I say, hey, I need a favor to do this, he can help me with the favor.
Yeah.
So I have supporters from the people now that have succeeded from the transparency that I've had.
Yeah.
So that's even become a full circle thing, I guess. The transparency helps to create success. The success then means those people can help me to be able to get the funding I need to reach more people to become more successful.
Yeah. And even with the guy who's like 24, 25 and has the 9 houses in Fort Smith, what are some of the steps that he did to get into a position like that? Did he just reach out, and even beyond that, what qualities or traits did he have? I mean, I'm sure he had to be extremely disciplined to do that, and very, I would assume financially literate as well.
No, you don't have to be. That's the thing, is you don't have to be this superhuman beacon of discipline and incredible. Like, we like to imagine the successful people around us being beyond our grasp, being more amazing than we are.
Yeah.
They're just ordinary folks. He's just an ordinary dude. He, some days he's willing to get up early and do some extra. There are definitely days where I call him and he's not around. Like, that's okay. We have differing traits, but it's a matter of learning through failure. And he failed a little bit at the beginning, but learning through trying and erring what works for you, and then figuring out what works. And what works for me is slightly different than what works for him. But it's in the vein, it's in the ballpark. And what works for you would be different than what works for me to some degree. We're different people with different qualities. But yeah, he's not some just bastion of highest quality work ethic, best financial literacy, none of those things. But he was willing to educate, he was willing to try it, even though it made him uncomfortable. That's all it is.
Right. So it's just the willingness to be able to fail and the willingness to come back to it no matter
Right.
what. Okay.
Some of the most successful people I went to high school with, especially early on, were the people that were the least successful in school. Because they were used to failing. They already were good at it. They failed all the time. So to them, going out and failing at something was just normal.
Yeah.
They saw no reason why they couldn't. And I know several people that have gone out and become very successful in the multi-millions of dollars from my high school.
Yeah.
Just because they weren't afraid to fail at things.
Yeah. Let me ask you for some advice on something then,
Okay.
on that failing note. So in high school, I was a terrible student, just kind of a bad person, to be honest. Then the gym changed me and all that mess. But I got to college, and at first, honestly, like I said, I wasn't like as serious about it as I am now because I wasn't trying to pursue a PhD and go the neuroscience route and all that. But at first, I wasn't necessarily scared to fail because, you know, in high school, I failed a lot. But now as I've progressively got more like 4.0 consistent semesters and I'm tutoring and I'm doing these different things, I'm scared of failing. Like, even if I get an answer wrong in class, it does kind of like, and it's an ego thing. It truly is. And I shouldn't be like that, you know, and that's one thing I've been trying to get rid of. But what are some things do you think I should do to like get rid of that and just be more okay with failing, because that is where growth happens, truly.
Right. So I've done martial arts for 35 years. It's very hard for me to learn new things in martial arts because I've already learned so much. I've gotten a vast background. Anytime I get a chance for somebody that can teach me something about it, it's like, yeah, let's do this. That's an exciting moment for me. Learn to value the learning and recognize the learning means something you don't yet know. Yes?
Saying YouTube is frozen.
Well, I don't know why.
Just letting you know.
Okay, let me see if I can touch it for a second.
Technical difficulties.
Let me try turning the camera around and see if that fixes it. Hopefully that helps. Okay, so when you value new information, when you value new skill, and you're going towards that, you're always looking for the points you don't know, so you're always looking for the points of failure. Does that make sense? When you become the martial artist that's like, I want to just be the best and this and not be challenged, and you won't question me because I'm the teacher, that's not a learning instructor. That's not the kind of person that's growing. You don't want to become the arrogant, I know what's going on. You always want to be thinking, what is the thing that I could learn from that? What is the thing that I could learn from that? And go after those things. It'll change, I think, your perspective on failure.
So if I were to just, anytime I fail at something, whether it's in class, whether it's a business, just depict what I can learn from it. But even if it's in class or something, for example, getting a question wrong, and let's say nobody's like looking at me, like you were saying with roller skating, if you fall down, you think everybody's looking at you, but truly no one cares. And that's the same thing with me in class. You know, I'll think like people care, but like truly nobody's going to remember. And if you get it wrong, they think you're, or if you get it wrong, no one cares. If you get it right, they think you're smart. Like truly. So that's one thing I've been trying to do is like talk more in class, get out of my comfort zone, talk to people like you, stuff like that.
I'm going to give you an assignment to do after we're finished.
Okay.
This is a psychology assignment, and I'm serious. If you do this, based on what you just told me, it may change the rest of your life.
Okay.
I want you to watch the movie Harvey with Jimmy Stewart.
Okay.
It's a black and white movie. Harvey with Jimmy Stewart. You all should watch this too if you've never watched it. Watch it.
Okay.
Pay attention to, and it kind of deals with some psychology, but pay attention to Elwood P. Dowd is the main character. Pay attention to him.
Okay.
And think about how happy he is, and think about the way he's living his life and how much better life is around that versus all the people that are correct. Because he's wrong, but pay attention to how much better the life can be and be wrong versus how much worse the life can be and be correct. And learn the lesson of that. It'll change your life.
Okay. So be okay with being wrong. Essentially, it's kind of like what the movie's about.
No, that's not what it's about.
No, okay.
Watch the movie.
Okay.
I'm not telling you what it's about. Don't even watch a trailer for it. It would be amazing.
Watch the movie?
Seriously, it would be the most amazing thing if you watched that movie and did not even know what it's about. Don't read a synopsis.
Okay.
Watch that movie with no knowledge whatsoever about what it's about. Just think about the happiness of that character, and I think it'll be an interesting psychological study for you.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that.
I think it's probably been a while now,
Yeah.
almost an hour and a
Yeah.
half. So I
Yeah.
think we're gonna
Sounds good.
call it. Any final questions or anything else?
Oh, no, I appreciate you. I appreciate you and your time. Thank you for having me.
I'm happy
It means
you
a lot.
reached out to me.
Yes, sir. Thank
And
you.
wow, your palms are. You
Oh, I
really
knew he
are
was going to
nervous.
say that.
You
Oh.
are nervous. It's
Just a
okay.
tad, just a
I would have
tad.
been extremely nervous at your age. I don't think there's any way that I could have done this because the microphones alone. I was so mic shy.
Yeah.
I could not have done it at your
I
age.
got the clammiest hands in the world. You can ask anybody who knows me.
Bye, guys.
Thank you,
did
Mr.
very good.
McKinney. I really appreciate it.